brother and my stepbrother, we went out to go try to...
Who saw the creature first?
I did.
Who saw the flying creature first?
My brother.
Dallin? Okay.
Just the animals that live next door, there's a little farm next door. They started making all these weird noises and it flies over. I see it and I was like, guys, look at over there.
Dallin and I and Jonathan were sitting on top of the playground, this tree a little bit, and he was just like, what is that? And Jonathan and I were like, what? And so Dallin just jumped out of the blanket, slid down the slide, jumped around behind the tree, and he's just like freaking out, looking at the sky. He's just like, what is that up there? What is it? It's like a giant bird or something. You know, we heard the dogs and stuff, and the animals, all the pigs and the horses and stuff or whatever, just go crazy. It flew above me for a few seconds and just kind of just glided. It's going to be about 20 feet, maybe 15. That was probably my best guess on it.
And then we saw this huge, great big, what I said, bird at that time, take off. I thought it was just a bird, you know. Flew right back alongside, and we got a perfect side view of the approximate same wing spread as what my airplane did.
Such creatures at all, but it had a big wingspan.
Were they have feathers, or was it more leathery like?
Had no feathers.
Landed there, and our helicopter kind of caught them a little bit by surprise, I think.
Lava below us, flew through some valleys. Oh, there was a heliport, or an area that was flat enough.
They had seen them. And the pterosaurs sometimes wandered over in that area. Otherwise, Harriet Sconce would not have had the sighting there.
Well, I was in my hammock, and I heard big bird, and big hubbub. I came out, I grabbed the camera that I had, I looked up into the sky, and I saw it almost right away. It was larger than any of the eagles or any of the other birds that we'd seen. Leathery, had the claws on the wings.
This is no joke. Where did this sketch come from? It was drawn by an eyewitness. About 3 years before this photo was taken, this little girl, Patty Carson, saw the flying creature in eastern Cuba in about the year 1965. Now, look at what happened 6 years later in 1971. Another sighting of a strange flying creature at Guantanamo Bay. A U.S. Marine was taking a break one day when he saw 2 of them. Please consider his own words, quote, "very close in range from where I was standing so that I had a perfectly clear view of them." Within minutes of his sighting, he drew this, quote, "they had a long tail trailing behind with a tuft of hair at the end. The wingspan roughly 10 feet, could have been 8 feet or 12 feet. I've interviewed Eskin by phone several times over a period of years. He's a real person and stands by his testimony of what he saw in 1971. The continent has much more than desert environments. Before my expedition in Papua New Guinea, which was in September and October of 2004, I started an email correspondence with a lady in Australia. Whatever people may think, the fact remains that my husband and I both saw that creature. My husband, being a scientist, took in things from the sighting that I was far too amazed, stunned, to take in. It was very big. We would not have been able to see what it was if the ground lighting had not lit its underside. I never believed these things existed until that night. The following is part of what the husband told me. I thought it must be the largest bird I had ever witnessed. It did not appear to be covered with feathers, but had a leathery texture, possibly covered with fine hair or small scales. I estimated the size to be in excess of 30 foot, possibly as great as 50 foot. We begin with a sighting of an apparent pterosaur seen in 1993 in Durham, North Carolina. I now quote the eyewitness, Dane Simmons. Me and two of my friends saw one at different times. I was alone driving my car and looked out my sunroof to see what I think was a pterodactyl. Huge bat-like wings, 2 feet in the back, and long pointed beak and back of head. It was so big I could easily make out the features. I estimate the wingspan was like 10 to 15 feet. Also, two of my friends were fishing. They said it was huge, 10 to 15 foot wingspan.
I went to turn onto a highway, and as soon as I took a right and started going down the road, I looked up and I saw a large flying creature. And it immediately drew my attention because its wings were not flapping like a bird's would. It was rolling kind of like a stingray in the ocean. So what happened was, as I was traveling north, it appeared over my shoulder in the windshield here of the car, and it was flying in this direction. As it was doing that, I decided to keep an eye on it, and I was so curious as to what it was. So I was going the same direction it was, and it eventually moved over towards a tree line about 100 yards off to my left, and I saw it start to dive, and so I continued to watch it. And it slowly dove down and landed at the end of the tree line. And then when it went to dive down by the tree line, I noticed that there was a long tail with a bulb at the end of it, and I kept double checking to make sure, and I'm like, that has to be a tail. It landed right at the end of the tree line, and then there was a road that heads west. It landed right before the road and at the end of the tree line, and at the end of the tree line there's grass that's higher up, and there's a little like ravine there where there's some water. So what I did was I stopped in the middle of the road and I thought, do I go home or do I check this out? And I thought, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I saw something I know I haven't seen before. I pulled off on the side of the road. I turned off on the road, got out of my car. I made a quick phone call.
Do modern pterosaurs ever attack humans? For most of those flying creatures, never. But beware of the large exceptional ones, those rare pterodactyls that might, on occasion, attack someone somewhere on the planet. This is a memorial for a fisherman who died many years ago on a small island in northern Papua New Guinea. I never met the man. As I understand, he died many years before I was on Umboy Island and many miles to the north. Yet the tragedy of his death may help us come to some kind of understanding that may help us each do something to make this world a better place. About 150 miles north of Umboy Island is Manus Island. In this area, the natives call the Ropin core. In 2010, I received a few emails from a native who was born on Manus. I now quote parts of his emails. Quote, "This is the story from the grandson of the man who killed the creature." Unquote. As a side note, the native man who killed a core eventually died from the injuries he received from the animal. The native apparently was defending himself from continuous attack from the flying creature. Now back to the story. Quote, "It has been endemic to the southeast Rapatona electorate until the early 1940s, where they declined in numbers. It was so bad that fishing at night stopped for years." Unquote. I have no independent verification for that, but apparently the natives in this area stopped fishing at night because of the danger from those flying creatures. Now back to emails. Quote, "The creatures described as having skin all over it. The oldies reckoned the core, as it is called by them, fished by skimming slowly around on the ocean surface. Large ones have been seen to take turtles, dolphin, and even young crocodiles." Unquote. Now we get to the attack on the native fisherman. Quote, "This story is from the early 60s, the last death reported by this creature. The native of Tandul village, Pack Island, went fishing and was attacked. The animal destroyed his canoe and he fought it with a traditional fishing spear. Every time the animal attacked, he dived under, and when the light above him showed the animal, he would lunge up, doing only slight damage. It followed him to shore, where a sea cave runs into a crevice which leads into the middle of the island. Badly wounded and backing into this barret, he wedged the spear into a crevice and took the animal through the mouth with the spear. He crawled out, was found by villagers who went to see the animal and told his story. He died 3 days later. Now there are only a few very shy. They have a suspected area. They live in the middle of large volcanic islands in caves. The natives declare it taboo and is never visited.
And then out the back of its head was a crest.
So it was directly overhead before it flew off into the cloud.
Leathery, had the claws on the wings.
I was convinced that there were living pterosaurs in that part of the world. We went and interviewed Harriet, the mother, and heard about her sighting from a very short distance. Maybe.
I saw something that I had only before witnessed in books. I didn't know there were such creatures at all. But it had a big wingspan. It had a very sharp, long beak. I never saw it open, but a long, narrow beak. I was actually terrified because it was such an unusual thing, and it's the same area that my husband and Steve saw the 3 other ones going down the branch of another river. I could take you there today, and I know what I saw.
I looked up into the sky and I saw it almost right away. It was almost directly above me. It was large, larger than any of the eagles or any of the other birds that we'd seen. Leathery, had the claws on the wing. I saw the animal and I was just stunned. I turned the camera on and I tried to focus in on it, but it was a very bright day. Almost no clouds in the sky except for very high clouds, white. So I could not get a good view of the thing. I only had a LCD screen to look at and didn't have a